Yeah, hi, is this Weinstein's Jewish Hebrew Menorah Kosher Cake Shop? Good, I'd like to order a custom cake. Yeah, can I have it with white cake and white frosting and have it say Happy Birthday Hitler? Yeah, that's right. H-A. Regular viewers of this channel are probably aware of the recent Supreme Court decision on the famous gay wedding cake case, in which a Christian baker refused to bake a custom wedding cake for a gay wedding, citing his deeply and sincerely held religious beliefs as his reason. SCOTUS ruled 7-2 that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission failed to pay sufficient respect to this man's beliefs when they fined him for refusing to bake the cake. The majority report among SCOTUS junkies seems to be that this was a fairly narrow decision, as it seems to only apply to cases in which civil rights commissions display overt animus against the beliefs of particular people, leaving the deeper questions about the conflict between gay rights on the one hand and freedom of speech and freedom of association on the other to be settled at a later date. Needless to say, I'm no legal scholar, and I don't intend to litigate the constitutionality or lack thereof of this decision in this video. Instead, I want to focus on a different and I think more important question, namely, what should the law of the land be? Lots of people conflate these two questions, but they're not the same. Unless the founders were perfect, what the Constitution allows or requires may well be different from what the law should allow or require. There are two basic positions here. The first is that the government should coerce bakers to bake custom cakes for gay weddings, by the full force of the law. Gay rights simply trump personal objections, which can only be based on bigotry, no different than banning blacks from lunch counters and water fountains. The second position, naturally, is that bakers should be free to deny this sort of service to gay couples. The basis for this freedom depends on who you talk to. According to some, the relevant freedom is freedom of speech, in this case freedom from compelled speech, which assumes that baking a custom cake is a speech act. According to others, the relevant freedom is freedom of conscience, in this case, the freedom not to support something that you disagree with, in this case, same-sex marriage. Some require that the source of this objection be religious, whereas others disagree and say it could be anything. Finally, a third group says that the relevant freedom is freedom of association, in this case, freedom to do business or not do business with whomever you want for whatever reason. I'm not going to take a position on this debate in this video either. Geez, Kyle, what are you going to take a position on? Nothing. I just want to raise questions for both sides of this debate, for both contemporary liberals and conservative Christians. I'll start with my questions for contemporary liberals that believe that Christians should be forced to bake the cake for the gay couple. How far are you willing to extend this kind of government action against private businesses? And do you have a principled reason for drawing the line where you do? Let's start with the Christian baker case and vary the details along different dimensions. First, let's vary the type of person that's denying service. Suppose that instead of a Christian baker denying this type of service to a gay couple, citing his religion as his reason, a Muslim baker refuses the same service, citing his religion as his reason. Should the government force him to bake the cake? Now suppose that instead of a Muslim refusing this service, it's a gay person, on the grounds that monogamous marriage is a heteronormative construct that he thinks needs to be eradicated. Should the government force him to bake the cake? Okay, let's make the baker a conservative Christian again, and instead, let's now vary the type of service that's being denied. Suppose that instead of a gay couple seeking out a wedding cake, it's a pro-choice feminist seeking out a cake for a pro-choice fundraising event. Should the government force him to bake that cake? Finally, let's vary all the variables here. The person seeking out the cake, the person denying service, and the type of service being requested. Suppose that a Christian asks an atheist baker to bake a cake with a Christian message on it. Should the government force him to bake the cake? What if the baker was also gay, and the Christian was asking him to bake a cake with a pro-traditional marriage message on it? Should the government force him to bake the cake? This last case is particularly interesting because Justice Kennedy, who wrote the majority position on the SCOTUS decision, cited cases like this in which the Colorado Civil Rights Commission allowed bakers to refuse to bake cakes with anti-gay marriage messages on it. My point in bringing up these hypothetical cases isn't to show that the liberal position is wrong. As usual, I just want to know what the governing principles are here and whether they're being applied consistently. What are the rules?
What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
If you want to apply government coercion to some of these cases but not others, on what basis are you making that distinction, and are you applying that consistently throughout these cases? Okay, now I want to turn my attention to conservative Christians, who believe that their faith requires them to deny this sort of service to gay couples. As I'm sure many of them are aware, traditional Christian faith also forbids remarriage after an unlawful divorce. A very natural interpretation of Jesus' teachings on divorce is that unless your partner commits an infidelity, remarriage after divorce constitutes ongoing adultery. Suppose that a Christian baker somehow becomes apprised of the fact that the straight person asking him to bake a cake is on his second marriage, citing irreconcilable differences as the reason for his first marriage's failure. It seems to me that consistency requires the baker to refuse to bake this person the cake as well, but religious conservatives have put forth much more effort opposing gay marriage than they have frivolous divorce and remarriage, which, if you ask me, constitutes an arbitrary fixation on gay marriage, and frankly, an unfair one. I go as far as to say that if a religious baker views his work as a tacit endorsement of the activity the cake is being baked for, then he has some responsibility to take some steps to make sure that that activity is on the up and up, according to his faith, regardless of what it is, whether it's gay marriage, frivolous divorce or remarriage, or anything that's inconsistent with his faith. But we just don't see that among religious conservatives, which I think is inconsistent and, in many cases, a kind of scapegoating of the gay community. In short, if you're committed to bringing your faith to bear on your work and the type of work you're willing to do, you should bring it to bear consistently and in a principled way. So there you go. There are my questions for both sides of this debate. What do you think? Do you think there's a principle according to which the Christian baker ought to be forced to bake the cake, but these other people shouldn't be forced to bake cakes for the other sorts of events? And do you agree with me that Christians are being inconsistent in refusing to serve gay couples, but not refusing to serve divorced and remarried couples? Let me know in the comments below. Until the next time I feel like I have pesky questions for both sides of the debate, see ya!